Before you embarrass someone in public, you might want to make sure their new partner doesn't literally own the ground you're standing on. When Dewale recognized his ex at Gate 4, he thought he was about to exert some cheap power over her. He had no idea her new husband didn't just have money, he owned the entire airline. Before the story starts, tell us where you are watching from in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe and like to help us grow. The departure terminal buzzed with the steady rhythm of rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, and hurried conversations. Sunlight poured through the massive glass walls, casting long reflections across the polished floor where aircraft lined up beyond the runway. Amara adjusted the strap of her handbag and glanced toward the large display board above Gate 4. Their flight to London was boarding in less than 30 minutes. Beside her, Ethan Carter folded the newspaper he had been reading and smiled gently. "We still have time," he said. "Would you like some coffee before boarding?" Amara returned the smile. "Only if you promise not to skip breakfast again." "I've already lost that argument." She laughed quietly. It was a small moment, almost invisible amid hundreds of travelers rushing through the terminal, until someone stopped walking. Several feet away, Dewale froze. His confident smile slowly widened. "No way." He stared. "Amara?" She turned instinctively. For a brief second, surprise crossed her face. Then calm replaced it.
"Dewale."
He walked toward her wearing an expensive designer jacket, polished shoes, and the unmistakable swagger of someone who believed every room belonged to him. "I almost didn't recognize you." His eyes traveled over her simple cream-colored dress and modest handbag. "So, this is what life looks like now." Amara answered politely. "It's been a long time." "It has." He chuckled. "I heard you disappeared after, well." He shrugged dramatically. "I guess life didn't work out the way you imagined." Several nearby passengers glanced over. Ethan remained silent. Dewale finally noticed him. "And who's this?" Amara answered naturally. "My husband." Dewale looked Ethan up and down. No flashy watch. No bodyguards. No designer logos screaming for attention. Just a neatly tailored navy blazer, comfortable shoes, and the relaxed posture of a man completely at peace. Dewale laughed. "You married him?" Amara nodded once. "Yes." Dewale smirked. "I always knew you'd lower your standards eventually." Ethan met his eyes without hostility. "Good morning." The greeting only amused Dewale more. "Oh, he's polite." He folded his arms. "So, what do you do?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I work in aviation." Dewale burst into laughter. "Aviation?" He looked around dramatically. "That explains everything." Several travelers slowed their pace. A young couple waiting nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. Dewale shook his head. "You really went from planning a luxury life with me to marrying someone working airport jobs?" Amara remained composed. "You don't know anything about our life." "I know enough." He pointed toward the premium boarding sign. "I bet you're waiting for economy boarding while pretending not to notice the business class passengers." Amara simply looked at him. She had learned years ago that arguing with pride only fed it. Ethan spoke softly. "There's no need for this." "Oh." Dewale smiled. "So now the husband wants to defend her." His voice grew louder. "Tell me something." He leaned closer. "When she told you I was the man who almost married her, did she also tell you why I left?" Amara's expression remained unchanged. "There isn't any reason to discuss the past, but there is." Passengers were openly watching now. Even the gate agents occasionally glanced toward the growing scene. Dewale continued. "I left because I realized I deserved someone who matched my ambitions." His grin widened. "I couldn't spend my life carrying someone who always settled for less." The words hung in the air. Amara lowered her eyes briefly, not because they hurt anymore, but because she remembered how deeply they once had. Years earlier, she had believed every promise he made. She remembered helping him study for interviews, encouraging him when businesses failed, selling her jewelry so he could pay a professional certification fee, standing beside him when nobody else believed he would succeed. Then the promotions came. The expensive suits followed. New friends, luxury restaurants, private clubs. One evening, he simply returned the engagement ring. I've outgrown this relationship. Those 6 words had shattered the future she imagined. Yet somehow, losing him had eventually given her peace. Now, standing inside one of the busiest airports in the world, she realized she felt almost nothing. Only gratitude that life had moved forward. Dewale mistook her silence for regret. I see that look. He laughed again. You've been wondering what could have been. Amara finally answered.
No.
No. I've been wondering why you're still trying to prove something that ended years ago. His smile faded slightly. Around them, another boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Passengers traveling on Flight 728 to London, please remain near Gate 4. Boarding will begin shortly. Ethan rested one hand lightly on the handle of their carry-on suitcase. We should get ready. Dewale stepped sideways, blocking their path. Oh no. He smiled. This conversation isn't over. A nearby airport employee noticed the tension and started walking toward them before stopping a few yards away, unsure whether to intervene. Ethan's voice remained calm. Please move. I don't think so. Passengers had begun pretending to check their phones while secretly watching every second. An elderly woman quietly guided her grandson a little farther away. The atmosphere had shifted. Not loud, not chaotic, just tense. Dewale tilted his head. So tell me. He looked directly at Ethan. Can you even afford business class? Ethan answered honestly. We're comfortable. That answer irritated Dewale more than any insult could have. Comfortable. No boasting. No insecurity. No competition. Just confidence. He hated it. So, that's your secret? He laughed. Act humble because you can't compete. Amara sighed gently. Dewale, let it go. He ignored her. Instead, he noticed the boarding pass tucked between Ethan's fingers. Without asking, he reached for it. Ethan calmly moved it away. I'd rather keep that. What are you hiding? Nothing. Oh, come on. Dewale leaned forward again. You embarrassed? His voice echoed loudly enough for nearby travelers to hear. Don't worry. He smiled cruelly. Economy isn't shameful. Some people looked away. Others frowned. The humiliation felt unnecessary. Ethan took a slow breath. We don't want trouble. Too late. Dewale stepped even closer. I've waited years for this. Amara looked directly into his eyes. You already won years ago, remember? For the first time, something flickered behind Dewale's confidence. Because her voice carried no bitterness. Only certainty. A man who expected jealousy had instead found indifference. And somehow, that hurt his pride far more. His jaw tightened. You think you're better than me now?
No.
You pity me? I don't. Then what? Amara answered quietly. I simply moved on. Those 4 words landed harder than any insult. Nearby, the gate agent announced pre-boarding for families with young children, but hardly anyone moved. The attention of dozens of strangers remained fixed on the confrontation unfolding only a few steps away. Dewale's face darkened. Without warning, he reached out and grabbed Amara's wrist. His grip was firm enough to stop her from walking away. The smile vanished from Ethan's face. His voice remained even, but there was unmistakable resolve behind it. Let go of her. For a brief moment, the terminal seemed to hold its breath. As the story continues, tell us where you are watching from in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to help us grow. Dewale looked at Ethan with open contempt. And if I don't? His fingers tightened around Amara's wrist. She did not struggle. She simply looked at him with quiet disappointment, the kind that came from realizing someone had never truly changed. Ethan took one measured step forward. You're upsetting my wife. His tone never rose. It carried no anger, only certainty. The calmness irritated Dewale more than shouting ever could. Oh, now you're trying to act tough. He leaned closer until only inches separated them. You airport people always think wearing a blazer makes you important. Amara spoke softly. Dewale, please let go. Instead, he pulled her slightly toward him. You used to listen when I talked. Before anyone could react, Ethan gently reached for Amara's arm. Not to pull her away forcefully, but to create enough space for her to step back. It should have ended there. It didn't. Dewale's pride had already outrun his judgment. His eyes burned with the desperate need to win a battle that existed only inside his own mind. With one sudden movement, he shoved Ethan backward. The carry-on suitcase rolled several feet across the polished floor before tipping onto its side. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A child clutched his mother's hand. The nearby gate agent instinctively reached for her radio. Still, Ethan refused to retaliate. He simply steadied himself. "Dewale," he said quietly. "This ends now." The words sounded less like a warning and more like a final opportunity. Dewale laughed. "You think you're giving orders?" He turned back toward Amara. "So, this is the man you chose?" His smile twisted into something cruel. "A man who can't even protect you." Amara finally pulled her wrist free. "I don't need someone who fights every insult." That answer struck his pride again. Everything about her composure made him feel smaller. He wanted her angry. He wanted tears. He wanted proof that he still mattered. Instead, she looked at him like a stranger whose choices no longer affected her life. That was unbearable. His breathing grew heavier. Passengers quietly stepped farther away. Several people had already begun recording, but most simply watched in stunned silence, hoping security would arrive before the confrontation became physical. An airport security officer appeared at the far end of the terminal after hearing the raised voices. He began walking toward Gate 4. Not running. Walking. He still believed he had time. He was wrong. Dewale suddenly raised his hand. Everything happened in less than a second. The sharp crack echoed through the terminal. His palm struck Amara across the face. The sound bounced against the glass walls. Silence followed. Absolute silence. Even the rolling suitcase wheels seemed to stop. Amara staggered half a step before regaining her balance. A strand of hair fell across her cheek. A faint red mark began to appear on her skin. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Shock had frozen the crowd. The security officer broke into a sprint. Several passengers gasped. An elderly man whispered, "My God." Ethan looked at his wife first. Not Dewale. Not the crowd. Only Amara. His voice remained steady. "Are you hurt?" She swallowed slowly. "I'll be all right." He gently brushed the loose strand of hair away from her face. His expression never hardened into rage. It became something quieter. Focused. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed his phone. No dramatic movements. No trembling hands. He selected one contact. The call connected almost immediately. "Good morning, sir." Ethan spoke in the same calm tone he had used all morning. "There has been an assault at Gate 4. A brief pause.
No.
He glanced once toward Amara. "My wife is safe." Another pause. "Please follow standard security procedure." He listened. "Yes. I'll remain here." The call ended. That was all. No names. No threats. No demands. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. Dewale laughed nervously. "Calling your supervisor?" Ethan didn't answer. The security officer finally arrived, breathing heavily. "What happened here?" Several voices answered at once. "He hit her." "We all saw it." He slapped the lady. The officer looked directly at Amara. "Ma'am, are you injured?" She nodded once. "He struck me." The officer turned to Dewale. "Sir, I'm going to need you to remain where you are." Dewale scoffed. "This is ridiculous."
He pointed toward Ethan.
He started it. The officer frowned. "Witnesses are saying otherwise." "They're lying." "They don't know you."
No.
The officer's voice became firmer. "They don't know any of you." That sentence settled over the group. It carried the weight of neutrality. Exactly what Ethan had requested. Standard procedure. Nothing more. Nothing less. A second security officer arrived. Then another. Within moments, a small perimeter had formed around Gate 4. Passengers were politely redirected around the scene. Boarding paused. The departure screen briefly changed status.
Delayed.
People murmured quietly. Some looked annoyed. Most looked curious. Dewale suddenly realized this had become much bigger than he intended. It was one slap. The words escaped before he thought about them. The nearest officer immediately wrote something in his notebook. So, you admit striking her? Dewale hesitated. His confidence wavered. I didn't mean. You either did or you didn't. The officer's eyes never left him. Dewale looked around for support. Nobody came. Not one passenger defended him. Instead, several stepped forward voluntarily. A middle-aged woman spoke first. I saw everything. So did I, said another traveler. A businessman in a gray suit raised his boarding pass. I was standing right there. One by one, strangers confirmed the same sequence of events. Mocking, blocking, grabbing, slapping. Every witness told nearly the same story. Dewale felt the ground shifting beneath him. He had expected embarrassment, perhaps an argument, maybe security asking everyone to calm down. He had not expected dozens of independent witnesses. The officers separated everyone involved. One stayed with Amara. Another escorted Dewale a few meters away. Ethan remained where he was, hands folded loosely in front of him. He neither followed nor interfered. As the officers collected statements, movement began at the far end of the terminal. A man in a dark suit emerged from a restricted access corridor. He walked briskly, followed by two airport operations staff carrying tablets. One of the gate agents noticed him immediately. Her posture straightened. She quietly whispered to a colleague, "Why is the operations director here?" The colleague looked equally confused. He never comes to passenger gates. The three men continued walking directly toward Gate 4. None of them looked at Dewale. None of them spoke. Their eyes were fixed on Ethan. The operations director slowed as he approached. For a brief moment he said nothing. Then, with unmistakable respect, he inclined his head slightly. "Good morning, sir." The terminal fell quiet once again. Not because people understood what was happening, but because they could all sense that something had just changed. As the story continues, kindly subscribe, like, and share to help us grow. The operations director's greeting hung in the air like the first crack of thunder before a storm. "Good morning, sir." Ethan returned the nod with the same quiet courtesy he had shown everyone else that morning. "Good morning, Daniel. I came as soon as I received the report." "Thank you." Daniel's eyes briefly shifted to Amara's reddened cheek. Concern flashed across his face. "I hope Mrs. Carter's all right." Amara offered a faint smile. "I'll be fine." Only then did Daniel exhale. "I'm very sorry this happened." Ethan shook his head gently. "There's no need to apologize." The security team responded quickly. Daniel turned toward the lead security officer. "Has standard procedure begun?" "Yes, sir." "Witness statements." "They're being collected." "CCTV footage?" "The control room is already securing every camera covering Gate 4, the security checkpoint, and the terminal entrance." Daniel nodded with approval. "Excellent." He looked back at Ethan. "We'll cooperate fully. That's all I ask." Dewale frowned. He looked from one man to the other. Something about the conversation felt different. No introductions. No explanations. Just the kind of familiarity shared between people who worked closely together. He laughed nervously. "So," he forced a smile, "you know somebody in airport management?" Nobody answered. Instead, another group approached from the direction of the executive offices. This time it was larger. The airport's chief of security, the head of customer operations, the legal affairs manager, two senior pilots still wearing their captain's uniforms. Even a flight dispatcher hurried alongside them. Passengers began whispering. "What is going on? Who are they here for?" The captain slowed the moment they saw Ethan. Without hesitation, both extended their hands. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." "It's an honor to see you again, sir." Ethan shook each hand warmly. "Captain Lewis." "Captain Moreno." "I hope today's flight goes smoothly." "It will, sir." The captain smiled with genuine respect before stepping aside. Dewale's smile disappeared. His eyes moved from one uniform to another. He wasn't confused anymore. He was becoming uncomfortable. The legal affairs manager quietly spoke with Daniel before handing him a folder. Daniel glanced through several documents. Then he addressed the lead security officer. "Please continue exactly as required. No exceptions?" Daniel looked almost surprised by the question. Especially no exceptions. Ethan nodded in agreement. Everyone deserves the same process. Those words settled over the officers. No one was asking for favors. No one was trying to influence the investigation. Everything continued exactly as protocol demanded. The crowd noticed. Respect replaced curiosity. A young woman standing nearby whispered to her husband. If he were trying to show off, he'd be demanding special treatment. Her husband nodded. But he isn't. Meanwhile, Dewale's confidence continued slipping away. He walked toward Daniel. Excuse me. Daniel turned politely. Yes. I think there's been some misunderstanding. There doesn't appear to be one. I mean... He lowered his voice. This man. He pointed toward Ethan. Who exactly is he? Before Daniel could answer, another voice came from behind. He doesn't usually introduce himself. Everyone turned. An elderly gentleman wearing a simple charcoal suit approached with measured steps. Although he wore no flashy badge, nearly every airport executive straightened the moment they saw him. The chairman of the airline's board. He stopped directly in front of Ethan. Good morning. Good morning, Richard. Richard smiled warmly. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. So do I. He looked toward Amara. I'm deeply sorry for what you've experienced. Thank you. Then Richard turned toward the stunned crowd. His voice remained calm. Mr. Ethan Carter founded this airline 23 years ago with 3 leased aircraft. Silence spread through Gate 4. He remains our majority shareholder and chairman. No one breathed. Our entire company exists because of his vision. A suitcase rolled unattended across the polished floor before gently tipping over. No one even looked at it. Every eye remained fixed on Ethan. The realization spread slowly through the terminal. The respectful greetings. The executives. The pilots. The operations director. The chairman. It all suddenly made sense. The man standing quietly beside Amara wasn't an executive. He wasn't a consultant. He wasn't a wealthy passenger. He owned the airline. Dewale's knees felt weak. His mouth opened, but no words came. He replayed the last 20 minutes in his mind. He had mocked Ethan's clothes, questioned his success, assumed he worked ordinary airport jobs, blocked his path, insulted his wife, and he looked toward Amara's cheek. The faint mark remained. His stomach dropped. His voice cracked. I didn't know. Nobody answered, because suddenly, those words sounded painfully small. The lead security officer closed his notebook. Sir. He looked directly at Dewale. Your knowledge of another passenger's identity has no bearing on this investigation. Another officer stepped beside him. You are being detained pending further investigation into an alleged assault inside a restricted airport area. Dewale looked desperately toward Ethan. Please. Ethan met his eyes. There was no triumph. No satisfaction. Only quiet sadness. The officers are doing their job. I made a mistake. You made several. I'll apologize. You should. I'll pay for her medical bills. Ethan answered gently. That's a matter for the proper authorities to decide. No threats. No revenge. Just accountability. The officers escorted Dewale toward the airport security office. This time, he didn't resist. As he disappeared through the secure corridor, passengers slowly began returning to their own journeys. The tension that had gripped the terminal gradually dissolved into ordinary airport life. Rolling luggage, boarding announcements, children laughing, aircraft taxiing outside. Life moved forward. Inside the airport operations office, security staff reviewed the surveillance footage from multiple cameras. Every angle confirmed the witness statements. The verbal harassment, the blocked path,
The grab.
the slap. There was nothing ambiguous. Everything had been recorded. Later that afternoon, airport police formally processed the assault complaint in accordance with local law. Witnesses voluntarily provided statements, and the CCTV footage became part of the official record. Dewale's status or embarrassment did not determine the outcome. His own actions did. When an officer asked Amara whether she wished to proceed, she answered calmly, yes. Not out of revenge, but because actions carried consequences. Several hours later, after the formalities ended, Ethan and Amara finally entered the premium lounge. Large windows overlooked the runway where aircraft lifted gracefully into the evening sky. For the first time all day, silence felt peaceful. Ethan handed her a warm cup of tea. "You've hardly spoken." She smiled faintly. "I was thinking. About today?" She nodded. "I kept wondering if I'd done something wrong years ago." He reached across the table and gently held her hand. "You loved someone who wasn't ready to value that love." She looked out toward a departing aircraft. "For a long time, I thought being left behind meant I wasn't enough. It never did." She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. "You've spent years proving that."
No.
He smiled. "You proved it yourself. I was simply fortunate enough to notice." Tears gathered in her eyes. Not from pain.
From peace.
Outside, their aircraft was prepared for departure. The same pilots who had greeted Ethan earlier completed their pre-flight checks with quiet professionalism. Nothing about the flight changed because the owner was on board. No ceremony, no announcement, no special display. Just another journey. As boarding resumed, the gate agent welcomed passengers with the same warm smile she offered everyone. When Ethan and Amara reached the aircraft door, Captain Lewis greeted them. "We're ready whenever you are." "Thank you, Captain." The cabin door closed moments later. The aircraft pushed back from the gate. As the engines gathered power and the runway lights stretched into glowing lines beneath the evening sky, Amara watched the airport grow smaller through the window. She didn't think about the humiliation. She didn't think about revenge. She thought about how different life felt when it was built on respect instead of pride. Somewhere inside the airport, Dewale sat alone, replaying every decision that had brought him there. He finally understood that losing Amara had never been his greatest failure. His greatest failure had been believing that success gave him permission to treat people without dignity. He had mistaken arrogance for confidence, control for strength, humiliation for victory. By the time he realized the difference, the person he wanted to impress had already stopped caring years ago. The aircraft climbed above the clouds, leaving the airport far below. Inside the quiet cabin, Ethan reached for Amara's hand once more. She smiled. Not because justice had embarrassed someone, but because life had quietly rewarded patience, kindness, and self-respect. Respect costs nothing. Humiliation can cost everything. Sometimes the greatest mistake isn't losing someone you once loved. It is believing their worth depended on your opinion. And sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one with the loudest voice or the deepest pockets, but the one who chooses dignity when everyone else expects revenge. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe, like, and share to help us grow. The end.